I'm Mindy Peterson, and this is Enhance Life with Music, where we explore the ways music makes our lives better and spotlight the resources you can use to enhance your life with music. Joining me today from Santa Monica, California, is Frank Fitzpatrick, author of the book Amplified: Unleash Your Potential Through the Power of Music. Frank is an award-winning Hollywood creative, international speaker, social entrepreneur, and wellness expert. He was Apple's first music and health specialist and is a leading visionary in the hearables tech revolution. Frank is passionate about creating innovative solutions at the intersection of human potential, entertainment, health, and technology. And last but not least, Frank and I are both natives of the state of Michigan. Welcome to Enhance Life with Music, Frank.
It's great to be here, Mindy. I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to our conversation.
So am I. Today's conversation was sparked by your book, Amplified. The book description from your website explains that the book, quote, shows you how to tap into the power of music in your everyday life to awaken creativity, deepen your relationships, enhance your performance, and rewire your brain, end quote. So you have my full attention with a description like that. And as listeners can imagine, we could have a full episode on every single chapter in the book. But what I want to pick your brain about today is this thread that runs throughout the book. And you do a deeper dive into it in one section of the book. But I found this thread really intriguing. It's this concept that as a culture, our basic understanding and view of music has shifted throughout history. It's kind of morphed into a narrow and misinformed understanding that increasingly devalues music. It's self-defeating and unsustainable for musicians and music education. You say in your book, quote, over the course of hundreds of years, our short-term profit-driven societal structure has changed the way we see and value music. It has transformed music in the eyes of society from an integral component of what makes us human to a simple form of entertainment and another commodity for sale, end quote. Can you unpack that for us and explain how you would characterize our society's current view and valuation of music and how that's changed over the years and why that's a problem?
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't want to be like, the nihilist here and paint this really grim future. I my work is about creating a more positive future for people. So it's how do we empower you through the positive side of music. Sure. And maybe reframe some of our thinking around it that's developed and is driving our operating systems or our subconscious frameworks. And
it's another form of awareness.
Into a way that maybe we can tap into it in a deeper way. So, I guess I'll start out with, there's a perspective I kind of flip on its head a little bit. And some people might embrace this from the science side. I have a lot of science in the book and a lot of scientists involved, but is that I look at kind of what Beethoven said and kind of a bridge between what Beethoven and Howard Gardner, who was, did the 9 forms of intelligence ahead of Harvard for a while. And I look at music. If music's not something we do, it's actually a form of higher intelligence. And as Beethoven would say, understands us better than we understand it. Then rather than trying to do music, why don't we try to understand how music does or plays us, Switch the roles a little bit. So then we start to experience music in a different way because music isn't something we have to necessarily perform to experience. We have to be at a proficiency level to know. We have to make a certain amount of money off of it for it to have value. That changes it a lot. And it also gives access to us in the deepest moments of our life, when we need emotional support, psychological support, health support, when we're alone, when we're in difficult situations, that music doesn't judge us, we judge ourselves or we get judged by how we do music, and then, so you can almost think, I used to say I did a lot of work around the world, with underserved cultures at war and children in these places. And it's like, and I would say some of these kids, music's the closest experience to unconditional love that they'll ever know. So it's the experience of music that's always there for us, non-judging of us. And that when we learn to whether we do it through developing particular skill sets as a musician or performer, or whether we just do it to embrace it into our life, has the power to enhance the quality of our being in every different way, every way we want to. And it doesn't discriminate against anybody. So there's something, I just try to flip that as it's not what we do, how we do music, what we can do with music. It's how music does what music does with us,
It was interesting. I think it was just this morning. I was on LinkedIn for a quick moment and saw a post by Anita Collins, and she was saying something about how she almost feels like we need to stop talking about the benefits of music, because it's almost like music is the dessert. And it's just like, if you have that it's nice. Here's some nice little benefits to it. But if you don't have it, I mean, that's fine too. You still have your main meal. Right. And she's like, no, it is the main meal. And so let's go back. You talked about how our society has come to see music as entertainment and a commodity. And those are two aspects of music, but of course. You talk in the book about the 7 faces of music. What are the 7 faces of music?
Well, I want to just start by, again, entertainment is really an important aspect of music.
Yeah.
Because entertainment brings us one of the greatest qualities of human experience, which is joy. Mm-hmm. So I'm not against music as a form of entertainment, and I'm not against being entertained. So I don't want to become the mad scientist here, who's just mad. And the science part's okay. So that's one piece. The 7 faces of music I did an early TED talk in 2012 or something. And at the time I was developing a program for the country of Brazil to put into elementary schools to help and again, I wanted to shift this relationship with music so that people would look at it differently as opposed to an academic curriculum or all these other values. And so I said, well, how would I do this? I've been in Hollywood a long time. How do we do this in Hollywood? Well, we come up with great characters. We come up with very simple understanding of those characters and what they do in our life. And then we build a relationship with those characters. And through the relationship with those characters, we build a relationship with ourselves and the aspect that they represent, right? The virtues that they represent. So
back to personification in 7th grade English.
So anyways, yeah, there you go. So, and it carries all the way to Pixar. So
yes.
So I had done this TED talk and I thought, okay, how do I make this simpler to an audience? And so I said, okay, what are like 7 areas of where music shows up in our life at a time when we need it, with or without us asking, right? So music can show up as an entertainer, right? Music can show up as a teacher. We can learn things through music. You're a teacher. You can teach math through music. You can teach all kinds of things through music. You can teach memory through music. Music shows up as a messenger, brings messages to the world. So we look at the great, the Bob Marleys and the Fela Kutis or the John Lennons, they were musical messengers. So the music from them was as a messenger. Music shows up as a healer, so we can use music has lots of healing properties. So whether you have a broken heart or whether you have, broken bones or you're going through surgery or chemo or whatever the case may be, music can help you through all of these processes,
Yeah.
A lot of time, especially for children, and this was framed a lot for younger people who had to develop an early introduction to the relationship with music, is music can show up as a friend. So if you're alone, music can make you feel not so alone. You can have artists that feel like they're speaking to you. You can have a relationship with an instrument and create music and have this connection with the spirit of music and receive that energy of music that, again, feels like a loving, intelligent, caring, unjudging energy that's very hard to find in the world. Where did I skip?
Let's see. So we have the entertainer, we have a friend, healer,
you have them in front of you, right?
Messenger.
Yeah.
I believe one was dancer.
Yes, the dancer. So
yes, is that what you mean when you're talking about music as a commodity?
No, absolutely not. So music is dance is music in motion.
Okay.
So dance is music embodied. So when we embody music, it makes us move. It's what happens to the brain. It's what happens to the motor cortex. It's what triggers. It's connected to the emotional part of our brain, and it shifts our emotions, shifts our neurochemicals, and triggers our motor skills. So if you have a piece of music that really moves you, quote unquote, it's hard not to tap your foot, or if you're a dancer, want to get up and dance. And so dance is just music in motion. We sometimes separate it,
Okay.
And movement is very critical to our healing process.
Okay.
There's a little story I tell in the book. I'll just tell really quick because we were talking about just a moment again about just cultures or societies that are going through strife or war or whatever to be the case. And Emmanuel Jaw, who's was originally from Darfur and a child soldier, and then became a peace activist later and musical artist. And I was talking to him about growing up and how they got through with like having no food for weeks at a time, and how they got through with all these different challenges that we don't have in society. And he said to me, when we didn't have food, we filled our bellies with song and dance.
Wow.
And when we finally got food, we celebrated with song and dance. So everything in life and the survival and thriving in life was all about song and dance.
Wow. Well, let's see. The seventh face, I believe, is muse. And you have so much fascinating information in the book about how music is so integral to creativity, and how that creativity is so integral to all fields, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a medical professional and a doctor, whether you are coming up with things to entertain your kids and activities to do, whether you're fixing a car, that's really brilliant how you talk about that. And just like the music intelligence lab at Georgia Tech and some of their studies that they've come up with, really fascinating. And just one other thing I want to say about the face of messenger, there's a quote in your book. Some of these musical messengers, some of them stand among the world's great thought leaders and change makers, and often have the potential to reach the ears, shift the minds, and open the hearts of more people than prominent political or religious figures. So all of those different faces are giving so much more of a robust image and well-rounded image of what music offers us beyond just a performance or a commodity. Talk just a little bit more about the role of capitalism in how this model becomes not sustainable financially, and how that impacts the value that educators see on putting music in schools, because, well, what kind of financial capability do you have if you go into music? Just talk to us a little bit more about how that limited understanding of music and capitalism sort of dance together and impact this.
Sure. And again, I'm not an anti-capitalist. I'm an entrepreneur.
Sure.
I think solutions within capitalism that can embrace all of these properties, and make them accessible to us in beautiful ways. It's just,
but at the same time, so many of us are saying, why is music still being seen as an extracurricular? And why is this not being valued in schools? Why is it just seen as like this philanthropic charity, let's give some money to the musicians, So having a greater understanding of the historical background of where we are right now, I think is really helpful.
Sure. So I had to do this for myself because I was pretty frustrated. This was around 2012, and I was running a global nonprofit and trying to help shift, understand what was happening, especially in the US, of music being pulled out of schools. It had been pretty much eliminated from healthcare as a viable modality. And I was a social entrepreneur. I was working with different governments, organizations, and with some pretty smart people. And I just couldn't buy the fact that there was some conspiracy theory, So without doing a little more homework. So I had to give a talk. It was 2012 at NASA as part of Singularity University to faculty and alumni. And it was on, the subject of music and society and in the development of the human being. And so I had to get over this. I couldn't just show up frustrated and complain a lot about what are you guys idiots? Because there was really smart people in the groups. There's a lot of smart people in government. There's a lot of definitely brilliant people in education and healthcare, deeply in their jobs because they deeply care.
Right.
And there's people like Jeff Skoll, who's running a lot of social impact work, and Gates and, and many other people who are doing very important work in the world for social impact, but none of them were including music or really supporting music or I said there has to be some sort of gap here, and their understanding is, I can't blame them because they're too smart. And so I basically did it for my own sake, did a 500-year retrospective on the development of the understanding of music. I made it like one slide at the time for the talk, but if we go back far enough, and I won't give you all the points, but basically if we go back to more of a community, tribal, smaller community structure in which we used to grow up and live, everybody participated, used collectively and individually music and sound. So for every aspect, from medicine to education to ceremony, spiritual practice to community gatherings to some for child development, all of these different areas, passing of life, transition of life, it was just all a natural, very natural part, that you would use, like the elements, air, water, whatever you need. Uh-huh. So it was a very natural thing. And then we developed, certain things, like then there was the kings who would have the courts, and they would have court musicians, and then they would have audiences. So suddenly there was people who became the performers, like the key performers, and then the audiences. So there was a separation of those who could and those who couldn't, and those whose role was to observe those who could, right? And there's nothing wrong with having master musicians or any of that, but when people start to judge themselves around that, or they get judged or valued around that, or they value music itself around that, then it's a very different piece. So, and then we had the printing press come along, and we could make printed music suddenly, and then we could print the music that should be printed and sell that in multiples, and then that music became the important music, and those people controlled who got to listen to and do what music, who controlled the printing presses. And then later, flash forward, we got recordings, and then recordings became some things where some people could capitalize upon music, and they would typically record a select level of people that they were thought were at a level or quality, and they might have a higher level of mastery or something they thought they could sell a lot of. And then there would be the listeners and those who would pay for that experience. And more, we started to separate the performer and the listener as the two modalities. So music slowly, and then we developed different forms of healing and different forms of medicine and different forms of education, and different sciences became the new dogmas. And then it became, so it all kind of shifted into, and then science tried to control through certain ways, education through others, government through others, certain religions through others. And so it all became kind of this, who has the control, and everybody knew that music was a very powerful population control as well. So at this point, you're continuing to separate, and then, flash forward to recorded music, radio, pop stars, celebrities, television, movies, so, and then people wanting to be those, right? Mm-hmm. And then the number one business in the music business actually became music education. And to sell music education, you have to sell that you're going to get something that allows you to make a career and commoditize your skill set and mm-hmm. what you create, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have to be good enough to be in the top 3%, because the other 7% don't make the cut for that. And then so people would study for years and years and try to be a classical first chair violinist and not make the cut. And so they go from 5 years old to 20 years old, and then they'd completely separate themselves from music, because it was the only reason that they were doing it was to make this cut, or to be a star, or to be a first chair, and they lost all their sense of connection to the greater purpose of what music could be and why it was in their life.
This is Bob Bender, host of the Business Side of Music podcast. Check out our show where we talk about all things related to the music industry. We laugh, we share memories, we discuss what's worked and what didn't work. Our industry is always evolving and can never be locked inside a box. From the rookie fresh off the bus to the well-seasoned professional wondering which new direction to take their career, our show covers all the bases. Join us as we chase this elusive animal we like to call the music industry. Check us out at businesssideofmusic.com.
In addition to music, I am passionate about health and well-being. For me, a healthy lifestyle includes eating a diet that is mostly whole, unprocessed foods. This is pretty easy when I'm close to home, but living a full life often takes us away from a convenient refrigerator and a predictable schedule. Enter my favorite whole food energy bar. Jam Bar is a certified organic whole food bar, non-GMO and gluten-free. Created by a food science and nutrition expert, athlete, and musician, Jam Bar is packed with protein and fiber and minimally sweetened with only all-natural sweeteners. It doesn't need to be refrigerated and has a 1-year shelf life. These bars do not melt, freeze, or crumble, which means they can go from a day of ice skating in Minneapolis to a trip to the beach when I'm visiting my daughter in Florida. The only problem with those beach trips is keeping my kids from eating all my bars because they love them too. Fuel your full life and healthy lifestyle with Jam Bars. Available at Amazon, select retailers, and jambar.com. For more info, you can also visit episode 160. Links are in the show notes. So we've really developed a very narrow slice of music and what it offers to us. And we're not trying to get rid of or devalue that in any way. We want the both and. We want to,
Right.
to
Yes, we want
continue
both and.
to have that, but also say, hey, wait, look, what about all of these other, the health ramifications of music,
So,
the
yeah, and health,
educational value that music has to a developing child's brain, and all of
right.
these other things, the 7
Absolutely.
phases that we touched on. And so it's let's bring back that. Let's bring back a more robust understanding of that.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
just for time's sake, let's sort of jump to some solutions, because as you mentioned, we're not doom and gloom, and you do bring up some really great solutions in the book. You say in the book, if we hope to create a future in which we can fully benefit from the use of music for education and the cultivation of a more creative, intelligent, and compassionate nation, we must first shift our values around music itself. So tell us about some of the ways you see that this shift can happen.
Right. So there's a number of ways, and I'll add I don't want to pull us over the cliff, but there is another cycle at the end of this when music becomes digitized. The commodity value went to basically zero, right? That's what happens to digital commodity. It goes exponential and it goes to the commodity. And then when the value in the marketplace shifts, the people that make decisions about where money goes into education and healthcare, they look at, they have to have functioning members of society, and they decide that that's not a functioning member of society ingredient, and that they can't make their money back to pay for the money they put into it. So, and the more we head down that road directly, and as we get 100 million songs last year, now it's 200 million. Next year with AI, it'll be 500 million, and we actually, the more we push on that model and nothing else, then the more we devalue, and the less likely we will be to have music back in healthcare and education in places that we need it, because the more it gets devalued in society, in a commodity and even a performance space, right? Mm-hmm. Anyways, I didn't want to go further over the cliff, but I did. So solutions. So solutions to me is really shifting the perspective, investing into, since science is, the validator, investing a lot more money on the health side into really biological metrics of how music and sound affect us at a cellular level. And we need a lot of that research. We've been, I love cognitive science, but it's been kind of the dogma of science, the go-to place. And now we're moving into the biology. So that's actually going to give us some really robust future, because we'll be able to actually, it won't just be thumbs up, thumbs down, I like this piece of music. It'll be looking in real time and, in a closed loop system at the way your body and full holistic system are responding, and over time to certain selections and certain input that goes into your ears. And we can get into the hows of that if you want, but that gets a little more complicated. But we're actually going to start seeing those in real measurements. So that will shift the model over time. So the more we invest into that research, the more we invest into those models. And then the other piece is, and same with, education. The thing to think about in education, and music because I'm in health, because I'm dealing with the Surgeon General's office and the governor's office now in California, is they make the decisions 10 years out. So the programming that we decide on this year that gets funded in a big funding cycle or something will lock down, so the STEM movement is what already like 20 years old, right? So getting STEM to shift is a lot of collective consciousness coming together, demanding it, parents demanding it, teachers demanding it.
It's a slow-moving ship.
Yeah, but in force, if we all really kind of stand for a different model, then I think that enough voices speak and we can be heard. So that's a big part of it. I think shifting it in healthcare will shift it in education because there is no education without well-being, and that's starting to surface, with all the issues and health issues and mental health issues coming so much to the surface. So I think that health is kind of a leading trump card to play. It's also an $11 trillion marketplace. So it's someplace people pay attention to.
Yeah.
And then, as parents and, individuals to kind of understand this, to like step back and go, okay, how am I cutting myself off from this amazing resource? This thing that, like when I was a child, like nothing moved me more, brought me more joy, brought me more happiness, helped me get through grief, helped me. All these things were very natural until I was told otherwise, or there was some other model I had to fit, right? And just really, really owning that and returning to it. And, so what you didn't make first chair for the Cleveland Orchestra, that doesn't mean that, those 15 years of practicing violin were at waste. Find the joy back in it, or pick another instrument, or just do whatever, don't judge yourself, because music doesn't judge you. So if we can remove the judgment and the guilt, that's a big, big layer.
Yeah, I was just a judge for a music competition recently. It was for a scholarship. And part of the application was these high school students had to write an essay about what music meant to them. And this one student wrote about, I don't remember how many times she was rejected for her application to a particular program. And I think it was like a pre-college high school program at Juilliard. Right. And she just kept going back and back and back and applying and applying. And she said, I finally realized that this rejection wasn't a failure, and that it didn't mean that all of this time I spent preparing and practicing was a waste, because I realized there's so much more that I'm getting out of this than just getting an acceptance to this program. And she eventually got accepted, but I was like, wow, how impressive for somebody that age, a teenager, to be able to recognize that and recognize the value that it's not just getting an acceptance letter and getting into this program, but there's so much else that she's getting out of these hours that she's spending on it. Was pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's low hanging fruit we can create. In the book, I put a couple of exercises that people can reintroduce themselves to music, or, I promise anybody that if they've never meditated or they've never played the piano, I can teach them to do both at the same time in 15 minutes with their eyes closed.
And that reminds me, like, I just have to say this quote from Kelsey Grammer that was from your section on music and spirituality. I don't think I've ever heard this quote of his, where he said, prayer is when you talk to God. Meditation is when you're listening. Playing the piano allows you to do both at the same time. And I was like, oh my goodness. Wow. How have I never heard that quote before? I love it.
So a lot of times I'll, if I walk in and I'll see, especially a young person or somebody struggling with playing the piano, I said, stop trying to play the piano. Let the piano play you. Your fingers know what to do.
And that's especially valuable when they do know the song and they're just getting ready for, say, a performance and completely overanalyzing things. Right.
It's like we don't have to think about how we breathe. The air, spirit breathes us, so it's like, Yeah.
Well, you do such a good job of pointing out in the book and in our conversation too today that all sides agree that we want our schools to produce the best scientists and the most innovative technology and the most creative business leaders, the most conscious citizens of the future. So we agree about that. And you mentioned in the book the value that the experts bring when they give us the research that's on math and science and psychology to make this argument of music's value in developing the whole person and the super learning aspects and characteristics that music can have. So that is definitely something that we are seeing an explosion, I feel, in this field of research,
Absolutely.
partly because of the technology that's allowing us to see what's happening in the brain. These non-invasive ways of technology, functional MRIs and things like that, that are allowing a lot of this hard science and research to demonstrate the value that music brings to the table.
Absolutely.
And certainly those researchers bring so much value and substantiation to what we're doing. Those of us who are sort of in the choir, those of us who are musicians and music educators.
Sure. Well, and I would.
Those of us in the choir still have a really important role to play as advocates and educators. And those are two sides of the same coin. I think discerning what is going to be meaningful to different stakeholders and really speaking to those, kind of finding the common ground that we have and starting there. There's a concept called the curse of knowledge that Chip and Dan Heath have popularized in some of their books. And the idea of that term is that if I know something, I just assume other people know it too. So those of us who are musicians and music educators just have this kind of wonderment, like you mentioned earlier, what aren't they getting? Like, how can they be so stupid? And you're like, they're not stupid. They're brilliant. Like, why
they're brilliant. After, by the time you've gone through 500 years, you got like 7 generations plus. So you've basically rewired your operating system. So even if you want to connect the dots between the two pillars, health, music, science, music, unless you're experience it yourself, you won't. They'll always be separate pillars. It's just the way the brain is wired at this stage, right? So it's not necessarily their fault, they mean well. It's just, and then if you also looked at most of those brilliant scientists who are doing the research and these leading coders and these Nobel Prize winners, you would see that most of them had music in their life as musical training. So so it is a whole person. And then the last piece I would just say is just emotional intelligence. I mean, if we haven't learned how emotional intelligence trumps IQ for life satisfaction and in the last 20 years, then we haven't really learned very much. So, in terms of accessing emotional intelligence, creativity, music, arts are such stronger gifts for connecting and building that up and self-esteem than the fundamental STEM principles. Those help the brain a lot and get you jobs, but you might not be as happy in your life.
Sure.
Doing it, right? So.
In your life and relationships.
Right, in relationships.
Which are about 90% of happiness.
Life is all about relationships. So I think that all the music teachers, God bless them, and all the music therapists, God bless them for the work they're doing. And a lot of us, we're raised in that mental framework. So we have to put ourselves in check as we're offering to the next generation. Are we offering them a new framework, or are we just trying to buckle down on the framework that we were brought into?
Sure. Well, and we've completely glossed over so many of the benefits of music that you address in this book. I mean, you cover so much ground and it's all so fascinating. And as you just alluded, you talk quite a bit about how many brilliant people down through history, going back to Plato, have credited a lot of their success and fulfillment in life to their musical training, at least in part. Yeah. And that includes Google co-founder Larry Page, Alan Greenspan, Steven Spielberg, Albert Einstein, a lot of the engineers and designers in Silicon Valley. Right. So you do such a great job of pointing that out and really going into much more detail on the incredible benefits that music brings to the developing child's brain, and it brings to education, social emotional learning, and on and on and on. You also have some great practical tips for people who do want to be part of the solution. You have 10 ways to support music and education, and ways to just incorporate music into your own life to be an example. And so I highly encourage people to get the book and read it. I just want to end with a couple of my favorite quotes from the book. Okay. There are many, but one is, by using music for your own learning, growth, and evolution, you can become an exemplar. Don't underestimate the value and ripple effect you can create in the world by doing so. And then one other quote is, together we can make a difference. With your help, we can use music to redefine education and learning for our children. In the process, you will help rewrite their future and create a healthier, more compassionate, and intelligent society for all of us to live in. So great, great quotes to end on. As you know, I ask all my guests to close out our conversation with a musical ending, a coda, by sharing a song or story about a moment that music enhanced your life. I will have you close with a coda, but actually, real quick, I'm just going to give you one last opportunity to say anything else that you want listeners to really know about this book or this topic before you close us out with that song or story.
Well, most importantly, I want to thank you because, it's people like yourself who are giving voice to people who care about this. And there's a lot of people who care who don't get voice for this. And the more we do that, and I think that's phenomenal. So I want to, commend you and for creating a platform to do just that. And then, I didn't write the book for me. I wrote it as a way, I've been doing this work for 40 years and it's something I wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be a dead kid on the streets of Detroit at 12 if music didn't become my drug of choice. And that's a true fact. And I decided then, many, many years ago, that this is how I was going to dedicate my life, to help people have a tool to find calm in the midst of chaos and to thrive in the face of challenge. And I have found, there's many modalities we can stack and integrate, but I find if you add music like a secret sauce to any of them, that you can up level them, make them more engaging, create compliance if you want to, whatever you want to say, and just, have a much richer, fuller life. And nobody's excluded, and it's fundamentally free. I hope people will share the information in the book. I hope it's useful. I just had to have a way so I didn't have to fly to every stage in every country to tell the story. So I had to put it down so more people could have access. So that's really, if somebody can't afford it, they can send me a note. I'll send them a free copy. I'm not, it's really, it's why I'm on the planet. So I appreciate it.
Beautifully put. And Amplified is such a great title for the book. And I love how in the title you have in a different color the letters that spell LIFE in the word amplified.
Right.
Very, very concise. Well,
Great.
Thank you. Well, what song or story do you have to close out our conversation with today?
Well, I guess I'll also put a little plug because some people are listening to this in audio and they won't have time to look at the subtext. So if you go to amplifiedbook.com, you'll be able to get access to the book at all your stores, or the audiobook, which has a phenomenal narrator. And
definitely. Yeah. We'll have all those links in the show notes for sure. But good point to verbally say that so that people have that in their ears.
Right. The song I chose, you asked me, what kind of songs inspire me. So I grew up in the Motown era in Detroit, and it was the heyday of 70s rock and Motown music. So with Aretha, Marvin Gaye, Ray Charles, and Stevie Wonder, and all, and all the great rock bands of the era. And I've been exposed to many, many different kinds of music. So I could point to so many. And I've written in many scores and produced many records, and that's been a big part of my career. So, and people used to ask me, like, what's the common thread? You do so many things with music. And I said, I had to think about it, but I said, I grew up in Detroit. And everything has to be very authentic and have a little bit of soul in it. Mm-hmm. So to me, soul music is really what I was raised and still am steeped in. And soul music is, what saved my life at 12 years old. That's what I was listening to Marvin Gaye when I decided not to go the other way. And soul music is this bridge kind of between the spiritual music and kind of contemporary commercial music of R&B meets, gospel. That's how it came to be. So I've always tried to do music like soul music that had deep intention in it to uplift and transform the human spirit, whether I did it through a film or whatever artist I was working with or whatever was the case. And so the song I chose for you is one I wrote and produced, and it got nominated for a Grammy. It was performed by Anthony Hamilton, who was a great contemporary soul artist. But it was written, the assignment was, it was the main title for this film with Sam Jackson and Isaac Hayes and Bernie Mac. And it was, and the assignment was write a number one hit for Sam and Dave that came out in 1967 or 68. I don't remember exactly. So I said, well, that's in my bones. So I wrote this song. I didn't really have to, it kind of came through me. I don't write the music, it comes through me, and it's called soul music. And it's very much, like, hopefully it'll sound like something you think you heard from your parents from the 60s or early 70s. So it's just, that's still in everything that I create, I try to make sure I infuse the intention and a real deep connection to my soul and my purpose, and make that available to other people through the beauty and the joy of music. So it's kind of a fun little number.
All right, y'all. Time to have a good time. Can you feel it? I can feel it. Feel it. Nothing like sweet soul music to bring us together. Listen up, the band is playing our favorite song. When the men all clapping and the ladies start to dance to the sweet soul music. Sweet soul music. Listen like some good.
And that is a clip of soul music. Thank you so much to Frank for joining us today and for all the ways he enhances lives with music through his book, composing, speaking, educating, and the many other irons he has in the music advocacy fire. You'll find links to Frank's book and website in today's show notes, as well as a transcript of the episode and links to related episodes you may enjoy, including some oldies but goodies. One is Music's Healing Power for Child Soldiers and Refugees, and another is Utilizing Multiple Intelligences in Learning. You'll also find links to all episodes related to science and health and the education and community categories. All Enhanced Life with Music episodes are evergreen, so check out the back catalog for more ways that music can make your life better. You can connect with me on email, mindy@mpetersonmusic.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining me today and for rating and reviewing the show. Until next time, may your life be enhanced with music.